All right, so we should be started now. Welcome, everyone. The purpose of this presentation is to introduce you to the Lower Cape Housing and ADU Resource Center. We're really happy that you could join us today. As I said, we are recording this presentation so that it will be made available at a later date through our website. And if I could share my screen, there we go. And the website address will be provided at the end of the presentation. So Ellie, oh no, excuse me. Let me introduce myself first, or my organization, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague, Ellie. So I am representing here the Community Development Partnership. Community Development Partnership, or CDP, has been serving communities on the Lower Cape, so everything from Harwich to Provincetown, for around 30 years. We do offer services in three basic areas. The first being managing affordable and community rental housing. We also have an advocacy team that, among other things, does conduct seminars, trainings, also outreach to the towns, etc. And we also have a group within our team that works with small businesses to launch and grow small business on the Lower Cape. Ellie?
Hi, thank you, Vicki. I'm Ellie Zucker. I work with the Homeless Prevention Council, or HPC. Like CDP, we have been serving the Lower and Outer Cape from Harwich to Provincetown for over 30 years. Our specialty is case management. We have a case management team that works one-on-one with people to help stabilize their housing, help troubleshoot issues between landlords and tenants, which is something I'll be talking about later in the presentation, as it's one of the services being offered through the Lower Cape Housing and ADU Resource Center. We provide different kinds of rental assistance support, which I will also be talking about, and we also manage the youth and young adult support for unaccompanied youth on the Lower and Outer Cape. So both of our organizations have a long history of working together because we have similar goals. We service the same area. We've been working in this area for the same amount of time, and we came together to, with help from Representative Sarah Peak, to apply for and receive funding from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, which allowed us to develop this Lower Cape Housing and ADU Resource Center. The purpose of this center is to help address the housing crisis existing on the Cape. And so the primary goal is to help create some additional housing through accessory dwelling units, which Vicki will be talking about in detail, as well as some other kinds of support for landlords and tenants of year-round properties that HPC is offering. So Vicki will be talking about the ADUs, and I will be talking about the other kinds of support that are being offered. All of these services are being offered for free through the Lower Cape Housing and ADU Resource Center. So we'll be talking, giving a little overview of the housing crisis on the Cape, what that actually looks like, and then go into talking about the different components of this resource center and what services are available.
So I will cover now just a few slides on the housing crisis on the Lower Cape. I think most of us have, if not at least, heard of the housing crisis situation that we're in. I'm sure we're all aware, and so let me start with a brief discussion about housing affordability on the Cape. This slide is a little bit busy, so I'll take a few minutes to really explain what it depicts. So there's a basic standard around financial, what it means to be burdened by the cost of housing. Generally, 30% of one's gross income, whether it be, an individual or household income, 30% is a comfortable or healthy, I'll say, financially healthy amount to be spending on housing. So based on that guideline, the pink lines here on this slide represent the median household incomes in each of the towns on the Cape. The blue bars represent the income needed to afford to own a home in each of these towns. And as you can see, simply put, the income levels that you're seeing by town are just not enough to afford the homes in these towns. I will also say that as of May of 2021, the median price of a house on the Cape was $749,000. So taking one town as an example, I'm going to let's pick on Harwich today. Median household income as of 2020 in Harwich was, looks like around $85,000 based on this chart. The price to own a home, the median income needed to purchase or own a home in Harwich looks like it's around $125,000. So there's a gap there of about $40,000 to $50,000. And that's not I'll say the worst or the widest gap that I see on this chart. Also, I just will mention that the yellow bars represent the income needed to be able to rent a home, an apartment, whatever, in each of these towns. And as you can see, the median incomes seem to suffice in every town. The problem is that there aren't any rentals. If you do just a quick search, I do this periodically just to see if there is anything out there. There are very, very few year-round rentals. They go very quickly when they are listed. So it puts people in a really difficult bind when they're looking to own or rent a home in any of the towns on the Lower Cape, really Cape-wide. So a little bit more about the affordability or I'll say lack of affordability. Just taking an example, taking a simple, realistic sort of example. If you're an elementary school teacher and you have a job offer somewhere on the Cape and your offer is, we're going to pay you $64,870, which is the national average for an elementary school teacher. That seems like a pretty respectable, pretty decent salary. However, that professional, based on the 30% affordability rule, that person can afford to buy a $240,000 house. And frankly, there just aren't any $240,000 houses on the Cape. So that's just one example, and it's true for many other professionals who can afford, should be able to, afford to buy or to live in the neighborhoods where they work. But it's very, very difficult to buy a home on the Cape. So that's a little bit just from a sort of high level about the affordability or lack of affordability for new homes. Ellie's going to speak a little bit about the impact on people.
So as a result of what Vicky just showed us, what we have actually is an absentee workforce where nearly 50% of the people who are working on the Cape are commuting from off Cape, and that was exacerbated by the pandemic. We, it may not be visible to everyone, but we do have families living below the federal poverty level in all the towns of the Cape, and the rate varies a little bit depending on which town you're looking at, but it can be up to 10% of families. And because of the high costs of housing, we are losing our workforce. We are losing more than 800 households a year who are making less than $100,000 because they just can't afford to live here anymore. This is a statistic from a survey that was done after the COVID shutdowns, and about a third of the businesses that were surveyed reported that they couldn't get their employees to come back to work for the reason that there was no housing. They couldn't find housing for their workers couldn't find housing. So which is all just to say, this is a problem. It's an ongoing problem. We know that COVID made it worse, but it already existed. So what can we do about it?
It's a great introduction. That's basically what we're here to talk about. So we did say that our primary objective through the Lower Cape Housing and ADU Resource Center is to encourage or support the creation of additional year-round housing. And specifically, we are focused on accessory dwelling units. So I will say that in the last several years, every town on the Cape has loosened or changed its bylaws to permit for the construction of ADUs. And just as, all other bylaws vary slightly from town to town, they vary slightly in terms of the ADU requirements and restrictions as well. So the purpose of the next section is to describe for everyone the services that we are providing, that my organization is providing to homeowners who are interested in constructing a new accessory dwelling unit. So, as I said, every town's definition of ADU varies slightly. There's basic size requirements. Some towns permit, have maximums or minimum sizes, and they all differ. There are other differences as well. But what you see here or in this presentation is what I'm calling the common threads, right? So no matter what town we're looking at, an accessory dwelling unit is intended to be a secondary structure or a livable space. And it's either an addition or standalone structure. But the important thing is that it provides independent living conditions or living circumstances for a different household. Now, what that means, what independent living means, is it must have a kitchen, a sleeping space, and a living space. And beyond that, there are variations, but it's really important that, you have, excuse me, I didn't say a restroom or sanitation. You need a living space, sanitation, and a sleeping space, and cooking space. So those are things that you need in order to be defined as an accessory dwelling unit. And it's called accessory because it's a secondary living arrangement. So in other words, it's got to be smaller, and it sort of has to blend in with the neighborhood, just like the primary dwelling or primary home does, but it's a secondary home. It can't be bigger than the existing single family home. That's pretty common as well among the definitions. So I said it could be in addition to a home, it could be standalone. Really, if you take a look at this little photograph or picture here on the right, that pretty much shows every possible type of ADU that could be built. So could be a detached structure or attached to the primary house. It could be within the existing house, meaning above or below, attic, basement. Or it can be above or below or within the garage. Whether that garage is attached or detached doesn't matter. So those are the most common ways to create, or places to create, an ADU. Very important that another feature of an accessory dwelling unit, and it's an important one, is that it's part of the property. It's part of the single family property. It can't be sold separately. Some towns even have deed restrictions that say once you make this change, it's part of the property. You can't change it back without modifying the deed, which is kind of a complicated thing, and it's not true in every single town. I think that's all I have to say about that. So, we're focused on accessory dwelling units for a reason. There are a lot of benefits for building accessory dwelling unit, as opposed to the alternatives like multifamily dwellings, like an apartment building or something. An accessory dwelling unit is preferable in some ways to a multifamily dwelling, because it is, again, intended to blend into the existing neighborhoods. It shouldn't stand out, and it shouldn't take away from the beauty of many of our communities that many of your communities enjoy currently. So that's one benefit. Another huge benefit is particularly for the older folks who are living among us, having that potential for additional income in your later years is really helpful for many homeowners who are retiring or retired. So it often gives the homeowner a means to remain in their home while being able to use some of the equity that's built up in their home to build the ADU. There are lots of other benefits. Again, I said you may even argue that it's preferable to a multifamily dwelling or development. One reason is, in theory at least, accessory dwelling units can be built much quicker than, for example, a new condo complex or something of that nature. So again, it's speed, it's able to blend into the existing environment, and it often gives our seniors additional income in their later years, and when it could really be helpful. So that is, in a nutshell, what's an ADU and why are we focused on ADUs? What are the benefits? I'm actually now going to talk about what are the services that we offer to those of you who have an interest in building an ADU. As you can imagine, as I said, every town's got slightly different requirements and restrictions. So the very first service that we're offering, or that we offer to homeowners, is you can call us and we will help you determine if your home, if it's feasible to build an ADU on your property based on the town zoning bylaws, as well as health and septic regulations. So they're really two different sets of rules that both have a pretty high impact on whether you can build an ADU. So we do offer the technical assistance where we will conduct this feasibility research, let you know, again, whether you can or can't build an accessory dwelling unit. If you can, then we will also outline and help you through the permitting process, which can be kind of complicated. There are often things that need to be done before you can actually apply for a building permit. And we'll lay those steps out for you so that you know what needs to be done in order before you can actually begin construction. And lastly, we do have available on the website lists of contractors, architects, site engineers, lenders even who have special ADU loan products. We can refer you to those resources that you will need at various steps in the process. Those, in a nutshell, those four things, those four categories are the types of services that we're offering to homeowners who are interested in building an ADU. And last but not least, we are offering $10,000 incentive to homeowners who successfully build an accessory dwelling unit and rent that unit on a year-round basis. We're asking for a 5-year commitment on the year-round basis. Not all towns require that ADUs be rented year-round, but in order to qualify for our $10,000 incentive, we are requiring year-round rentals only, because frankly, we didn't talk very much about it, but the short-term rentals or Airbnbs, they exacerbate our problem of not being able to offer affordable year-round housing for folks looking to live here and work here. So there are other incentives that are available to homeowners who are interested in building ADUs. I have one example here. Cape Light Compact has several rebates and other incentives available if you are looking for high efficiency construction. I'll leave it at that. And then there's information about that on our website as well. And the last item here is to let you know that we are working with towns right now, actively working with a couple of the towns of the Lower Cape and hoping to open discussions up with other towns on the Lower Cape around making other incentives available through the towns, whether that be, direct financial incentive like our $10,000 or waived or reduced fees, maybe streamlined permitting processes. All of those types of incentives or assistance are on the table. And we are definitely speaking with the towns already and trying to make such things available. So look for updates on that on our website or newspapers. Hopefully very soon there will be more information about that available to everyone. So that concludes sort of what we're doing here for you if you're interested in building an ADU. At the end, I will talk about how you get the ball started or how you get the process started with us. But the next section, Ellie will be providing a summary of the services offered by HPC. I can pause here for a minute and see if there are any questions, or we can also take questions at the end of the presentation. So Ellie, maybe you should do yours and then we'll get to the end.
Sure. So one of the things that HPC has actually offered for over a decade is something that we call resident services. We're billing it here as landlord and tenant services, and this is just an example of something we do. We work with the Dennis and Yarmouth housing authorities to provide these services. And sometimes we offer special workshops. So this was something called Get to Know Your Smartphone, where we brought in local high school students to work one-on-one with seniors to help them better understand their phones. But but that's not the main target of these services. You can go to the next slide, please. As it relates to the Lower Cape Housing and ADU Resource Center, what we're really putting forth is help for landlords and tenants to maintain a good relationship. So the idea being that as new ADUs are created and new landlords, people are becoming new landlords, we are there to provide these services should there be any issues, or even if there aren't any issues, just to troubleshoot anything that might come up or questions people may have about what they can and can't do. So that is something that we are actually making available to any year-round landlords or tenants who live on the Lower and Outer Cape. As of last year, these services are available for free. And then the other component, the other major component of our participation in this resource center is some funding that we were able to, part of the ARPA grant was some funding for housing stabilization, which is basically a flexible fund to help people who are at risk of losing their housing. So the process is that somebody who has an issue and may be losing their housing contacts HPC and works with case manager to connect with various resources that hopefully will keep them from losing their housing. And again, this is available to anyone, and it is a free service. Next slide, please. In addition to that, for new landlords or tenants on our website, we have some links to resources about landlord and tenant rights and responsibilities. And we also are offering free rental listings for year-round rentals. Again, the idea was that as new ADUs are created and people are looking for, how do I, list my rental? Where do I go? This website offers a place to do that, but it is, again, also open to anyone who currently has a year-round rental and would like to list with on the Lower Cape Housing and ADU Resource Center webpage. Next slide. And that is the address for the website, lowercapehousing.org. And there are the phone numbers for Vicki and myself.
And I just would like to mention, in terms of the website here, the easiest, I think, and best way to start the process, we do have an area of the website dedicated to ADUs and another dedicated to housing resources, some of the housing services. Both of those sort of subdivisions or sub pages, if you will, on our website do have forms, sort of inquiry forms, where you can put just a minimal amount of information. Let me talk about the ADU form specifically. If you complete that form with, by answering those several questions that are there, one of us here at CDP will receive that form, and we will return the message either by phone or email, whatever you select as your preference. And we can start the intake process, which basically starts with a little bit more elaborate, not really that elaborate, maybe 20-minute interview, getting some information about some of the specifics around your property and your interest in building the ADU. We will then, return that call, we'll have the interview, and then we'll go conduct the feasibility research. So in my opinion, the best way to get the ball rolling with us is to complete the online form, and then, take it from there. I don't have anything else on this slide, but at this point, I think our presentation is over. And we've got, as much time as needed for questions. So I'd really like to see the folks on the call. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I will make the slides available to everyone after our presentation. So if there are questions, however you feel most comfortable, either speaking up or please feel free to put it in the chat. Let's see.
And just everyone was muted, so if you have a question that you would like to ask, please remember to unmute yourself.
Thanks, Ellie.
Hi, good morning. My name is Nancy. I'm Nancy calling in. I do have a question about the length of the rental, should ADUs, should this whole process occur. Payback of the loan is over 5 years, correct or not correct? That's one question.
So what do you mean by payback? You mean term of the
The loan, term of the loan. Mhm.
so the $10,000 incentive that we are
Mhm.
giving, it's a deferred no interest loan. What we are doing is saying, all right, here's the $10,000 right after you meet the conditions. And yeah, after 5 years, the loan is forgiven. If you sell the house between, the date that we give you the incentive and the 5-year term, or if you stop renting year round, then yeah, the loan is payable. We would ask for the loan back. We would ask for the 10,000 back.
Okay, thank you. That's one question. And after that 5 years, should the current renter decide to leave? Not a problem. You're at that point, you're able to list it as a rental place for somebody else. Yes.
Well, yeah, you don't have to rent to the same renter for 5 years. You just
Right.
have to have it rented continuously on a year-round basis for 5 years. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes. Okay. All right. I hear of stories of renters and, sometimes they're not necessarily great, the way the conditions are left in the unit. How might those problems be addressed if there's perhaps some damage done during their time there for that particular year? How is that resolved, and is that all on the owner's shoulders to take care of?
So I can field that one.
sure.
There is some information on the website with about like security deposits, which I think is basically what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So there's information about how to, from mass.gov, for how to hold security deposits and sort of what the regulations are around that. But I mean, I believe the short answer is yes, it is. The owner is responsible ultimately for the condition of the unit, and it depends on what kind of agreement you enter into with your tenant as to
Mhm.
be responsible for damage done to the unit.
Mhm.
So that would
Okay.
include things like, damage done, but it would also include things like maintenance and repairs.
Right. Yes. Okay. And again, if somebody, a renter, were to leave, I don't know how the agreement has to be made, if that's individual between you and the renter, yearly, monthly, however, if somebody leaves, then of course it's vacant. I mean, how quickly are you assumed to replace that person?
You mean to satisfy the year-round rental?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's specifically, I don't think we have a specific
Like in between.
requirement. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think we would employ like a reasonableness standard, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Certainly, I think what we're trying to guard against isn't a unit that's not rented or not able to be rented. What we're guarding against is someone going out there and renting it for June, July, and August,
Oh, yeah, season.
and then not renting it the
Of
rest of the year
course.
intentionally. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, I
Yes.
wouldn't consider what you're describing to be a default necessarily. It's really just, I can't rent it in this condition.
Sure.
So I need a six, maybe I don't know, 3-6 month extension, and then I'll go ahead and rent it for 12 months again.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do know. Yeah.
It's not a default
Mhm,
if
mhm.
something like that happens.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the
Sure,
answers.
and I do see another couple of questions here in the chat. The first is a separate entrance required for the ADU? Generally, yes. An accessory dwelling unit is independent. And by independent, it means that, the resident there is able to come and go through his or her own or their own entrance. So the answer is yes, a separate entrance required. And are conservation requirements more flexible for this type of construction? And I would say the answer there is no. If you're in a conservation district or in one of the, special overlay districts, those same requirements are going to apply. I can tell you that, health requirements, for example, sanitation, septic, etc., those are not affected at all by town building. Building department would let you build, but only subject to these other requirements. I hope that answers the question. Are there any other questions? Okay. Great. So, as I said, I will make these slides available. I have a record of, who's attended. I have your email addresses. I will provide the deck. Please visit the website. There's a lot of information there, not just about how to start the process, but also all of the topics that we talked about today are fleshed out in a little more detail on our website. And please, let us know if you have any additional questions. All right, I'll stop the recording and